We are back by popular demand. At least that's what we like to say. I think we're just back because we want to offer bonus content. Todd Sadowski, Jay Paterno, and Tom Bradley. All right, so we got viewer questions we're going to talk about. We're going to do a little extra scouting report, a couple of plays there as well. And look, your guys' reputations precede you all across the country. So we got a fun question that came in, directed at a different game and a different program.
Yeah, we're going to get the Penn State stuff, so everybody sit tight, Penn State. But this one came from an Aggie fan. Aggie fan here now. I don't know how many people saw the end of the Alabama-Texas A&M game, but with last play of the game on the 3-yard line. Last play of the Alabama game, what about that play call? What play would you have run with 3 seconds left? That's from Pierce in Texas. But let's look at it first for those that aren't familiar. So let's take a look at the screenshot of it. So what you had was there's 3 seconds on the clock.
And the score.
And the score is 20-24. Alabama's up 4. So A&M, this is do or die. And so basically what you got is you got trips here, and you have a receiver over here one-on-one. If you get one-on-one, you like that. But they have a guy in here to take away the slant. They've got guys that end up sitting in here to take away the inside stuff. So you end up with a fade to the field, or what they run, a comeback or a pylon route in the backside. Now, this is a great call in terms of X and O's, Tom.
It's just not executed properly.
No, it's not executed very well, and it's also a very difficult, it's not an easy route. You really got to sell that thing and get them to think you run the fade and then come back off it, as you see on the video there. So, again, worked out for Alabama. Tough call. What would I might have called differently? Maybe a sprint out, something to get your quarterback on the edge of the trip side because they're playing man and nobody's got the quarterback to block them, but it worked out for Alabama. Tough one for A&M, but not a bad call. Just got to execute that a little better, and the receivers got to sell that a little bit more.
Well, you got to take it deeper, too. I mean, he didn't take it deep enough to even give him a chance to get the throw.
Where have we heard that before? Worked out for Alabama. I think we've heard that phrase before.
Yes.
I'm looking at this, guys. I mean, how many times do you have screens running off of each other to get this guy over here and all this room? But, sometimes it's about who you got, right? You want to go to your number one guy if you got a number one guy and all that stuff. So,
we ran the same thing against Michigan in overtime in 2002 to Brian Johnson. Hit right off his chest. We did not win the game, unfortunately. We kicked the field goal in overtime.
But if he's your guy, he's your guy.
I mean,
you do or die with your best player.
Would you quit bringing up those memories?
Please, I didn't.
He doesn't forget anything.
I watched the play and I went, I've seen that. Okay, let's talk about some Penn State stuff now that we've had some fun. This is from Eileen. We keep hearing about NIL and saw the piece on NBC News about Penn State and NIL. How is Penn State going to keep going to keep the balance with doing the right things, and how can fans get involved? I'll take this one because I was on the piece. But I think the big thing is, you don't want to get into where you're creating incentives when recruiting with bags of cash. We've not done that. Penn State's not done that. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to continue to make sure that it's legitimate. We're going to create all kinds of opportunities in terms of academic opportunities, things like that, charity opportunities, a lot, and we've already the collective Success with Honor. If you want to get involved, go to successwithhonor.com. We've helped athletes in 28 of 31 sports already with NIL, so that's how we got to do it, and do it the right way. Do it the Penn State way.
Absolutely. I mean, that's you're used to that way things are functioning that way.
Sounds good
Tom.
to me.
Yeah. There you go.
But fans can get involved at successwithhonor.com. Let's talk a little bit about the next question. After the game, Coach Franklin mentioned that we were undersized. We talked about it a little bit in the scouting report. Given the attention to strength and training, how can that be at a school like Penn State? That's from Mike H. Tom, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I don't quite agree with that right now, because I think if you have those type of bodies, I think your weight room, your program has been good. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly where he was coming from with the undersized part of it, but I'm sure there was something that was bothered.
What stands out to me is that this comes up after Michigan, okay? And Penn State, traditionally, lately, has played Ohio State really good. Yeah. I think they've built the team and the roster a little bit to try and cover as many wideouts that Ohio State brings to the field. I mean, Ohio State has clearly been the elite team in the league. You build your team a little bit to try and counteract some of what they do, throwing the ball, a lot of wideouts, a lot of speed, a ton of defensive backs on the roster. But you can't, you didn't cover all of the things that you need to cover. And if you're smallish on the defensive line, you got to give Michigan some credit to build their team a certain way. And I just don't know if this roster matches up very well with that roster. certainly the way that it played out in the execution. We've already talked about they were close in some things that they just did not execute. Now that comes down to players. It doesn't come down to size all the time. So Penn State has to counteract what they do really, really well. And they didn't do that.
And
They didn't do
sometimes,
that.
if you really like nickel, and
Yeah.
you've got undersized guys kind of playing that half linebacker position, that's a tough matchup.
Yeah.
And Michigan's going to try and make you defend the run, and that's what they were able to do. Whereas if it's not necessarily an undersized up front alone.
Right.
You're undersized at the second level, and they got to the third level a bunch in the run game because they were able to get on the second level guys and block them, as we talked about.
If the offense doesn't do their job, the defense gets exposed.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up happening. It wasn't complimentary. Talk about complimentary football all the time. They just
Yeah.
didn't do that. All right, sorry. Did go a couple
Next
plays.
question, we got one more. This is from Doug, longtime fan, really shocked at how much we've fallen behind Michigan. Is it time to admit we're not winning the title this year and going with the freshman quarterback?
It's a hot topic.
Pump the brakes, folks. I mean, I really think, number one, if the freshman quarterback was the better quarterback, I think he'd be playing. Let's start with that. I mean, Penn State, they want to win games. To then, after one loss at 5-1, to start saying, well, let's start planning for next year. There's too much football left.
There's a whole season left. We just pointed out how many times a team loses, comes back and wins the national championship. There's a whole season left. It's time to relax a little bit.
I'm a big picture guy. I get that.
Yeah.
I get to be able to do that. You guys dive in all the details. If you would have said 5-1, beginning of the season, you're going to win 2 of the 3 road trips, because we talked about the difficulty of those 3 road trips with Purdue, Auburn, and Michigan. You come out all that 5-1, people would feel a lot better about it. It's the way that they lost and the way that they were handled by Michigan. Now, that's why we keep
that
saying.
said, Sean didn't miss any tackles Saturday.
Yes, correct.
In all fairness.
Right.
I mean, but not to get into that.
No,
but
absolutely. So that's why we keep saying the significance of Minnesota is absolutely huge, because they're a big team. They bring them more of the same. And so when you talk about that, if they can't get past Minnesota and Ohio State, you got 4 games left in November, you're 5-3. I think you're probably going to see Drew
You
Allen.
brought up a great point, because one of the things that we heard about this week was that they took the defense all together in the room for corrections rather than individual coaches taking care of this group's getting this and this group's here. And he let them all hear it. Because usually when things like this happen, it's a whole defensive group effort. There's here. You point out with each other what the problems were and how we're going to fix those problems. Rather than just individual rooms hearing it, they're going to hear it collectively.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little about it. If you do, when you start to think about one quarterback versus the other, it also elicits a response from the defensive side. So if you look at Michigan, on 3rd down and long, when Clifford's in the game, you see more zone because they're afraid of his running ability. And Drew does not have that kind of ability that Clifford does. Not that he can't move, but he doesn't have the same. So when you're going to get zone coverages where these guys have to keep an eye on this guy, because if he gets loose, he can make the first down. So now you're going to see what that does is, because they're a little bit more concerned low level, it's going to enable you to get guys in behind and convert on those 3rd downs. You see more zone, less man-to-man. If you do see man, you see somebody spying the quarterback, which again takes somebody out of coverage.
Yeah, one of the things is, we talked about this, is that Drew is going to see a lot more 5 under.
Yep. And
2
we'll
deep
get to
with
that in the
man
next
under. We'll
diagram.
get to that with the next diagram.
And you see right there, I mean, you got the guy sitting low level. Sean's able to look downfield, and because he's low level, able to get somebody behind him, and now you got a first down, you move the chains.
Always the most effective plays for quarterbacks when they move forward and keep their eyes downfield. Somebody usually pops open and flashes open. There's a word. Trace McSorley was excellent at it. Did it all the time to avoid the initial rush and then pick off a play downfield.
Now let's take a look at what they'll do. What they did to Allor as he came in the game. We go to the next diagram now. What we call 2 deep man under, 2 safeties deep. So there's deep help. You're man-to-man, 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 because you're not worried about him running for 20 yards. So now you can take these guys down and get all kinds of matchups you want, and now they have help. You can do things with the safeties where he comes down low level, helps on that same route you just saw, or they sit back and take away the deep throws or double up on the slots, and now you got to win these inside. But it changes the way you cover. And again, would I rather see the zone stuff as a coordinator? Yeah, absolutely. This stuff, if you have a quarterback that can run and he gets loose against this coverage.
Well, here's the other.
Tom, you've been on
There's 2 other things that happen to this. When you're able to play that type of a coverage, against them. One of the things it enables you to do is those two guys don't have to just play too high. I can double here, double there, and play the 5 under and take my spots there. The other thing is if you want to play it and you have a mobile quarterback, then here's your problem. You better go to a 3-man rush and have a little guy popping off to be like a spy in there because, so to me, if you said to me, hey, what show would I like? Oh, let me play the 5 under 2 deep all day because I can do everything I want out of it, especially if that guy's a statue back there.
Yeah.
And not that Drew's a statue,
No.
but comparatively between
Right.
two, you're going to see different things. And as a play caller, you have to have different plays for your third downs because they're going to do different things. So you got to have a little bit of different package with the guy comes in. But again, this is just for all the people that say, let's make a change,
Right.
let's do this. You got to understand, you never get anything
They're
for
prepared
nothing.
for it, right?
Yeah,
they're prepared
you never
for
get
it.
anything for
now,
nothing.
to counter that, I would like to say, boy, that's a lot of area for these big tight ends to roam in the
Right,
middle.
but
So
again-
if Drew Aller's in there, maybe that's what ends up happening.
Right,
You can
but
take
now
advantage of
I've
that.
got your tight end here, and if I'm worried about that matchup, I've got 2 on him.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now you got to win out here, but you still have another guy to help. So it really, they've got the numbers when you have the guy.
It's a
that doesn't
numbers
run.
game. It changes it for
Absolutely.
sure. And I know as
Well,
a defensive,
here's the thing with the numbers game too. Because we just talked about it. Who do I want to double? I can double. I can play 2 shell. I can come down and play a hole with the guy over top. There's just going to be a whole bunch more variables when I have the opportunity there. When I don't worry about that guy
yeah.
Running
the ball.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, as a Big Ten defensive coordinator, there's a lot of wooden figures back there sometimes through the years. So I'm sure there's some guys that you looked at and you're like, oh, this is going to be great. I don't even have to worry about him. I can just worry about where he's throwing the ball.
Well, if you look at the future of the game, it's going to the guys that keep you out of this coverage because of just that. Because it's a great equalizer because once you have a quarterback that's not as mobile, you have to be really good up here. And you have to have good people around him to beat people so that those plays can happen. Whereas Sean, over the years, for as much as people want to maybe say Sean this and Sean that, he's run for a lot of third downs conversions. He's done it over and over and over again at times where you go, and it bails you out as a play caller. I mean, I'm going to tell you, Mike Robinson goes out of some problems. Zach Mills got out of some play calls. Darryl Clark, same thing. I mean, they do help you with that mobility.
And that's at all levels.
Yep.
All levels when the quarterback is mobile and they can run for those first downs. You got to account for that.
Yep.
So, man, is this fun or what? You're just eavesdropping on us and listening in. I'm just glad I get a chance to talk with you guys about this stuff. It's really a lot of fun to do these bonus segments and talk more about the in-depth. And again, I think, Minnesota, Ohio State, we knew this was the 3-week gauntlet of their schedule. They really don't have any other ranked opponents out there. So November is what November is when it comes down to it. We'll see how they can get through these next 2 weeks. It's really going to define their
One
season.
of the things that hasn't come up is, okay, you just went through what you went through. You didn't play very well. But one of the things about that that's kind of interesting is, and fun actually, is everybody around you is critical of this and that. And you guys, now when you go to the building, it's just you in the building. And that's a place where you can go, that's your little sanctuary where you can work it out and get better. And that's the place you want to be, is in that building getting ready for the next game.
Yep. Away from the noise.
Yes. Yep.
Stick together. Don't lose twice from that one loss. So we'll see. We'll see how they bounce back, and it's going to be a fascinating game, fascinating whiteout against Minnesota. Anything else?
Keep sending us the questions. This is
All
fun.
right. Yeah, all right. Submit them at NittanyGameWeek.com. We'll answer your fan questions. Todd Sadowski, Tom Bradley, Jay Paterno, thanks for tuning in.